Family greetings, welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to touch bases with the family because there's a development taking place in Africa which pertains to Russia that I think is a very important development. I don't really know how to look at this situation because initially I understand the history of the interrelationship between the African independence movement and Russia. Okay, we know that Africa, Cuba, and Russia have had a history of collaboration, especially with regard to the aid that Russia and Cuba have extended to African nations in their fight against colonialism, right? We know that Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, people like Mikhail Gorbachev, and numerous individuals from Russia have had a hand in certain key developments in Africa, right? We know that historically, Russians were not a part of the colonialism on Africa. Russians were not a part of the colonialism in the Caribbean, right? I don't know about Russians calling us the N-word, right? Russians are not known to have the kind of anti-black sentiment that we've seen in Western nations. Okay, so I can understand why there was collaboration. In fact, in America, the civil rights movement was helped by Russia. When you consider Angela Davis and her organizations and the persons that she worked along with, they were heavily interested in the communist ideology. I can understand communism has had some resonance on the continent. As an ideology, communism is very similar to the village concept, all right? Collective ownership of property, all right? Everybody has a role to play, everybody has a voice in determining the future of their country or their settlement. All right, and so in many ways we can see why communism, why Russia has had a role in Africa. And today we find that African nations have actually made closer ties with Russia. We've seen recently Vladimir Putin having a conference with numerous African leaders. I'm not sure if 55 nations were represented, but I'm sure there were some who actually were there. Seemed to be at least 30 or more from what I saw in the photo. But I'm very disturbed by this development because on one hand, I can understand the animosity towards the West. We know that the West has had a hand in the assassination of many leaders around the world, particularly on the continent and in the Middle East. We know that the West has created a global economy which placed the dollar and other European nations' currency at the top of the totem pole. We know that the system of trade is beneficial to the West and it is predatory for nations in the third world. All right, and I think what we can say about the West can also be said about the East. There are countries in the East, particularly China, which is also making inroads on the continent taking away the sovereignty of countries in the continent, you know. And so I'm just reflecting on this situation because I notice persons in South Africa in particular have had a lot of support for Vladimir Putin as of late. I saw Julius Malema on more than one occasion has voiced his support for Vladimir Putin. And I think Julius Malema is a brilliant brother. I think he knows why he is supporting Russia versus supporting America. Okay, America has been pushing this LGBT issue, and I think that has rubbed the continent the wrong way. It's rubbing the Caribbean the wrong way. We've seen recently there was a diplomatic spat between Jamaica and America because America is trying to place an LGBT couple in Jamaica, and they want the ambassador and his, I'm not sure if it's a male or female, but basically the ambassador is in a same-sex relationship, and America was applying for citizenship for the spouse, so-called spouse, and Jamaica basically was denying the status, indicating that it would have been against Jamaica's laws with regard to same-sex relationships. You know, that's illegal in Jamaica, but America was trying to place Jamaica in a position of compromise where they would have to accept a same-sex spouse of the ambassador. You know, so culturally, many countries are at odds with America, but the trade relationship and the aid relationship has kept many persons, I guess, in the web, in a part of America's web, you know. But in light of these reflections, let me just make a comment about Russia and communism, because although we can identify with many aspects of communism, particularly communalism, but I think everything has a price. Persons on the continent are behaving as if Vladimir Putin does not have an interest in assisting Africa, right? People are acting as if Putin is only helping Africa out of a spirit of solidarity, right? We have to realize that all of the nations that are providing aid for Africa are doing so with ulterior motives, right? Whether it be for arable farmland, whether it be for ensuring that they have a trade relationship with this country, whether it be to loan money to extract revenue by way of interest payments. All of these countries that are assisting Africa are doing so with an ulterior motive in mind. China is no different. China is assisting Africa because China wants land in Africa. Okay, China has exhausted its arable farmland and its oceans, and China is looking to expand into other territories in order to feed the 1.4 billion people in China. Okay, Russia has seen its collaborators dwindling, and Russia is seeking arable farmland, minerals, oil from the continent in exchange for this assistance, right? And so any person who is able to feed you is also able to starve you. Okay, many persons are rejoicing that Russia is sending 200,000 tons of grain to Africa to help to feed the people, right? While this may be a good gesture, while it may be useful right now, let's consider the fact that Africa is the place with the best soil, the best climate for producing food, for growing food, right? How is it that a person can come to Africa and feed people in Africa? That should never be the case. Africa is a whole continent. How can a whole continent not be able to produce enough food to feed itself, right? We should never depend on food from another country, right? That's going to set the wrong trend. People are going to now start looking at Russia as being some kind of savior or redeemer, right? While we appreciate the assistance, we know that it's coming with an ulterior motive. Okay, Russians are not sitting down in Russia saying, boy, we need to go help some Africans. All right, what's going on in Africa? We need to go and assist those Africans. That's not the case. Okay, if Russia is killing people who speak the same language as them in Ukraine, right, people who look like them, people who grew up around them, what makes people think that Africans are on the top of their list of priorities in terms of goodwill? All right, we need to wake up and actually approach these issues dispassionately, right? We need to use the assistance where it's beneficial, but we can't wholeheartedly support any of these entities in this power struggle. All right, Africans are being used as a pawn in this power struggle to bolster Russia, right? And I would just hope that our people would see that we need to consider our own cause. Africans must do for Africans. We can't expect or even accept people from outside assisting us. Right, with 55 states, a plan of action should have been undertaken to break this predatory loan scheme and this predatory aid scheme that has been destabilizing Africa and robbing Africans of their sovereignty. Okay, family. And so I just wanted to leave this word with the people. Like I said, I'm kind of on the fence on this issue because I understand the history, I understand the ideological concerns, but I think we need to consider when we have ever had persons assist us without an ulterior motive. Family, let me know your thoughts in the comments below about all these dynamics. One love.